Hello, Mr. Sanjay Kalra. Thank you very much for joining the interview with VITV channel today. First of all, Vietnam is restructuring the banking sector at the moment. So, in your opinion, why should we give the highest priority to the issue of non-performing loans?
I think the problem of the NPLs is related to the problems in the banking system as a whole. As we all know, the banking system and credit growth in the last few years has been quite strong. In fact, many people would say that it has been excessive. With this excessive growth in the banking sector and in credit, there are problems and weaknesses and vulnerabilities that have been built up in the banking system. And these vulnerabilities and weaknesses are now limiting the amount of growth that we see in Vietnam. Because businesses are not able to get credit because there's a lot of non-performing loans in the banking system. So to remove the constraints on growth to the economy, one of the important things that needs to be done in terms of structural reform is to reform the banking system. And one of the important parts of reforming the banking system is to deal with the problem of non-performing loans. So it's related to generating the conditions for strong and higher growth in Vietnam. That's the reason why the NPL problem should be solved and solved quickly.
What are some favorable conditions and some major challenges that we have in the process of dealing with the non-performing loans?
There are many challenges, and right now it's a little difficult to see what the favorable conditions might be. The challenges relate to, first of all, getting a good number that everybody can believe in terms of the level of the non-performing loans. The banks are reporting the NPLs at 4.5. The central bank has issued a higher number for NPLs, and many people in the market have questions about both numbers, the number of NPLs that the banks say they have and the number of NPLs, the level of NPLs that the state bank. So the first thing to do is to get some more clarity on this. And at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of the banks to report the correct number. And what that requires is stronger supervision by the State Bank of Vietnam. So there is a challenge, first of all, in terms of everybody believing in the right number. The second challenge comes in terms of solving the problem of NPLs, whether the level of NPLs is very large so that it needs to be handled in a centralized sort of a way, in a centralized asset management company, or are the NPLs small and the individual banks can handle it by themselves. So there is a choice that needs to be made. And once that choice is made, if a centralized asset management company has to be set up, how do you set it up? What are the rules that it needs to follow in terms of receiving the NPLs from the bank and then selling them in the market? How do you finance this asset management company? And very importantly, how do you set up the rules so that everybody believes that the entire process of cleaning the NPLs, moving them from the bank into asset management company, is done in a very, very transparent way in terms of the valuation of the loans, in terms of then the loans being sold off in the market so that some money can be recovered against these assets.
Can you share with us some of the international experience to deal with the NPLs problems?
Many countries have done it. I think Thailand, Korea, Malaysia. But the most important thing out of all of these experiences is to ask what works for Vietnam. What is the good points of all of these? By and large, the most important thing is to keep transparency in the process, to make sure that at the end of the day, everybody believes in the process, and to put an end. The process of dealing with NPLs should not be continuing for many, many years. So there has to be a beginning, there has to be a good middle, and a process when the whole thing has to end. So these are many countries have done it, and many countries have done it successfully. But Vietnam needs to find its own solution from all of these experiences that it can learn from the other countries.
Cross ownership is also one of the critical issues among Vietnamese banks. So, in your opinions, is there any connections between the two issues? the cross-ownership and the non-performing loans?
There could be a connection in the sense that if you and I have ownership in each other's bank, then we are known to each other. There's a possibility that we might make loans to each other. So the cross ownership can generate connected lending. And the problem with connected lending is that sometimes it does not lead to a good evaluation of the loan when the loan is first made. So I might get a loan from you without having a good business plan. So there can be some relationship between cross-shareholding amongst banks because there are relationship between the banks, and then that can translate into weaker lending standards. And if the lending standards are weaker, then the possibility or the probability or the chance that the loan can become a non-performing loan is higher.
How do we deal with the cross-ownerships among banks?
The most important thing to keep in mind, there should be disclosure. If there is cross-holding amongst banks, it should be very clear. At the end of the day, their shareholders, with or without cross-shareholding of a bank, should be known to the public clearly. Who is the real person responsible for the bank in the event if the bank has problems? The responsibility should lie with the shareholders of the bank because they are the owners of the bank and they are taking public money and then utilizing it for making loans. So it has to be made very clear. The rules that the central bank has for the disclosure of shareholding should be clear, should be tight, and they should be enforced very strictly. Because at the end of the day, the central bank is the regulator of the financial system. So these are some of the things where I think improvements can be made in terms of dealing with the issue of cross-holding across banks, shareholding.
Well, that is for today. Again, thank you very much for joining the interview with VITV channel today.
Thank you very much for coming to our office. Thank you.